first part is really about looking back at what powers have already come to communities through the Community Empowerment Act. And those, and I'm be quoting shamelessly from the SCDC, Scottish Community Development Centre briefing. Scottish Community Development Centre provides extremely helpful briefings on anything to do with community engagement and community empowerment. And in fact, we're fortunate enough to have their Deputy Director here with us today, Dave Allen, who's somewhere in the audience, I think. There he is at the back, heckling, yes. And in fact, Dave will work with me to deliver Alistair's workshop in the session immediately after this. So the Community Empowerment Act covers has got 11 sections and covers a whole range of issues, from the national outcomes that the Scottish Government sets for itself and for its agencies, through community planning, which also has a lot of provision for community engagement and community empowerment. Part 3 is about participation requests, which are the opportunities for communities to get involved directly in service provision, service design and service provision by challenging local agency, government agency, public sector, and offer to provide some of the services they provide on their behalf. So if you think that the local library isn't run up to the standard that you would like to see, or the swimming pool isn't open the hours you would like to see it open in, there is nothing to stop communities now to go to, in this case, the local authority and say, I think we could do a better job than that, and put forward your case. And the great thing about the Act is there is a presumption in favor of agreeing to those requests. So there needs to be very good grounds for in this case, the local authority to turn your request down. And a similar provision, this kind of presumption in favor of requests, also applies to asset transfers. So there are a whole range of public bodies that communities can approach, and as communities, we can ask for certain assets to be turned over to us, either as a purchase, or as a free transfer, or as a lease, or other management arrangements. And again, the presumption is in favor of those requests being granted, and there has to be good reason for those requests to be turned down. So there are other parts of the Act include the community rights to buy land. That's extending the community right to buy that's existed in rural Scotland for a while to more urban situations. So again, a great extension of the powers available to communities to take control of what happens in their area. And a number of other provisions also come into play, including a delegation of forestry commissioners' functions, and that therefore includes the management of land used by the Forestry Commission. There is a revised National Forest Land Scheme, which really gives, again, opportunities for communities to take control of forested land in their area. There is a section that paves the way for football clubs, fans, to take over the running of their football club. There is a whole section on common good property that requires local authorities to publish a register of the common good properties in the area. And there is a section that updates the allotments. I think the last Allotments Act goes back to the 19th century, so this is kind of bringing it up to speed and puts some specific requirements on the local authority to identify the need for allotments and where there is a need or there is a demand for allotments, to identify land that people can use. There is a whole section on participation in public decision making. Again, that facilitates the participation of communities in decision making by public sector authorities. And there is a section then on, not sure how it kind of snuck in the final stages of the Act passing through Parliament, and it's a non-domestic rates section which provides new powers for councils to provide additional support for businesses in meeting their business rates. I'm not sure exactly what the thinking was in having that particular section in this particular bill, but it must have made sense to somebody at the time. So that was the looking back bit. And that was fine. When I was speaking with Alistair, I said, well, you know, I should be okay. A kind of Community Empowerment Act, you know, it's been around for a year or so. Guidance is coming out all the time, and as guidance comes out, the Act really comes into force. But the bit I'm really a bit concerned about is I don't know really what you were going to say about the forthcoming local democracy bill or Act. Well, he said, I wasn't going to say much about that. I said, we were quite interested in knowing about the Local Democracy Act because we're really wanting to look forward and understand what actually might be coming our way. So he said, well, really, I can't give you anything other than what's in the public domain. And what's in the public domain, it says, it's the commitment in the current government's manifesto, so the SNP manifesto in 2016, has got some specific commitments around local democracy and participation. The government plan for 2016-2017, the Scottish Government plan called A Plan for Scotland, 2016-2017, has an area specifically on putting people in charge and creating opportunities. And there was a debate initiated by the Greens on the 30th of November last year, which was specifically on local democracy. And he said, have a look at what the minister had to say during that debate, because that's as up to speed as you will be. And actually, the debate itself seemed extremely interesting. Now, I think I probably would have read it more carefully had it been any other time than 12:15 last night. So I intend to go back to it in daytime and see. It's actually, it gives you a little bit of hope in the quality of debate when, yes, there is a little bit of sniping between parties, but actually, by and large, they really seem to be focusing on the issues and really listening to each other and putting different perspectives and together coming to a better conclusion, which I guess is what debate should be about, rather than just scoring points. So I did have a look at the SNP manifesto, and after spending about 20 minutes with one that didn't seem to have much about community participation, I realized I was looking at the 2015 manifesto, so I went back online. And in terms then of local governance, the government's manifesto before the election talked about reviewing the roles and responsibilities of local authorities and the relationships between local authorities and health boards. And in fact, that certainly resulted in changes to the way health and well-being, health and social care are provided. But also goes on to say, we aim to transform our democratic landscape, protect and renew public services, and refresh the relationship between citizens, communities, and councils. We will consult on and introduce a bill that will decentralize local authority functions, budgets, and democratic oversight to local communities. So that's what's being planned. What's being planned is something that gives us in communities far more power than we have at the moment, far more control, far more of a say about what's going to happen. I guess elsewhere within the manifesto, I did find references, and certainly during the debate, references to the fact that the local government structure in Scotland is not the same as elsewhere in Europe. We've got much larger authorities covering a lot more people. As a consequence, people feel very distant from their local authority. And Murray is not one of the biggest. If you think that Highland Council goes by the name of a local authority, then you can see how it really, the whole concept is stretched to beyond breaking point. But there is no appetite for a redrawing of boundaries of government. the way in which the government is approaching this is by transferring power to communities. So Community Empowerment Act was, I guess, Act 1, and the Local Democracy Bill will be the next step. The manifesto went on to say the Community Empowerment Act delivered new rights for communities, and we will build on this by setting councils a target of having at least 1% of their budget subject to community choices budgeting. So that's a participatory budgeting, as we saw in the example in the film, in the movie at the very beginning of today. And it goes on to say, we want to encourage and make it easier for people from all backgrounds to get involved at all levels of decision making. So that's the agenda. And in the same section of the manifesto, it goes on to say, in a section called Valuing Our Third Sector, we have made significant investment in and promoted the role of the third sector, social enterprises and volunteers. The sector plays an important role, and we want to increase and encourage it to grow its influence. So that's definitely the game that TSI Mari are in, and the journey that we are on, and we really do want to make sure that the third sector voice is heard. The third sector, it's for many people it's just jargon, but just defines that huge section of the economy which is not just simply for profit, which is the private sector. It's not simply for service provision, but it's actually for social purpose. So that whole part of the economy which is for social purpose, which includes anything from the smallest community group to the largest international charity, from voluntary organizations that really carry out their work thanks to volunteer effort and to grants from grant-giving trusts, right up to social enterprises who generate all their money through trading. That's that huge, wonderful, diverse, warm, active part of society and the economy. That's us, that's the third sector. And we are going to be more and more important in addressing the challenges that we face as a society, and we are going to be more and more important for bringing people together, communities together, to grasp the opportunities which are very much within our reach. So that's what's coming over the horizon. Yet more control, more power to communities, more influence for the third sector, more expectations of collaborative working and working for a common purpose and for the common good. So I will ask Jackie to come and tell us how the workshops will play out this afternoon, to make sure that we all go to the right ones, but they're all focused on that. How do we actually come together to bring about that influence that will transform our society in the way it needs to be transformed. So thank you very much. Thank you.